From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports after show live stream. It's our post-podcast live stream. Make sure, obviously, everyone stays tuned for the podcast that drops tomorrow. But welcome, and we encourage you to be interactive here. Ask questions. Tell us we're wrong. Tell us we're right. Don't be afraid to get in our faces during the live stream here. Guys, let's jump into it. Let's talk about esports and gaming.
What we do here is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week. But we look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We dissect, we analyze the business implications of everything happening in this industry.
The live stream's getting bigger!
I know.
Make sure you go buy William's book, The Book of Esports, which it's killing it on Amazon as always. I think everyone has it by now, but if you don't, go buy it. And even if you do, maybe go buy a second copy, you know.
Nothing says I love my mom and dad like the Book of Esports.
And on the after show, we cover all the stuff that just didn't make it into the podcast. It's still just as good. It's just as interesting. It's maybe even better because we get to interact with you guys.
Ghost Runner, I managed to fit that in with about the busiest week of work I've ever had. So anytime
priorities, right?
It's an anti-William is late device.
It's very effective.
Don't count on it though.
Risky. Hot garbage. It's an indicator of bad money management. It's an indicator of immature management.
I have some hot takes.
For the vast majority of people who game, and look, if you look at just the gaming market, the dollar in revenue of the $137 billion global gaming market, 70 billion of that is mobile. 70 billion. For those guys, this is a revolution.
Listening. Thank you for tuning in every week. Thank you for leaving those 5-star ratings and reviews. We really appreciate it.
If I was Epic, I'd be hiring some of the best talent away from Facebook, not from other game developers. I actually think they should have a fire sale, right? Sell the company at rock bottom price because it's going to zero. And I think the natural, interesting acquirer would be Apple. And they would convert them to literally Apple arcades. We want people to funnel in. We want everyone in the audience ready to go and all hyped up. That's the idea. Julian says the live stream is the best by far.
And I, for one, welcome the fact that anything that gets you to stop playing Candy Crush is good for us as a whole.
The live stream!
William and I went on a bit of a tangent.
About World of Warcraft drops, yeah.
A little bit of a tangent. This is the first interesting thing I've seen from a competitive level to what Twitch is doing. I mean, let's start with a big story. It's impossible to ignore big numbers.
This is the Business of Esports podcast.
The fastest growing entertainment phenomenon of this generation.
I, Prophet of Esports, joined today by my friend and co-host William Collis.
Yeah, we got the Book of Esports out. It's a big deal.
So everyone knows me as the Prophet and William as the Professor.
From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports after show live stream. I'm Paul Dawalibi. I'm joined today by my friends and co-hosts, William Collis, Lindsay Post, Jeff Cohen. For those of you who are new to the after show, what we do here is we cover all the stuff that didn't make it into the podcast. Still just as important, still just as much fun, but it didn't make it into the podcast. We still dissect, we still analyze the business implications of all these things happening in the gaming and esports industry. For those of you who are regulars of the live stream, welcome. If you're new here, also welcome. We encourage you to participate, get involved, challenge us, ask questions. This is meant to be interactive, and we want to have fun with it. So get involved, guys.
I'm just mad Lindsay has permanently stolen my square.
Oh, okay. Hold on. I'll fix this. There you go. All right.
Oh, power move. Power move.
The thrill of victory and the agony of defeat within 1 second.
Lindsay, I have to reward the on time somehow.
William, nice background. Is that new?
Honestly, this is what happened. Paul and I were joking around earlier, and I said I can't have another podcast where my background is either holiday themed because we're well out of the holidays, or the Book of Esports, because as proud as I am of the Book of Esports, if you haven't read the Book of Esports, you should read the Book of Esports. As proud as I am of that, it's been my background for like 4 months, and so I was like, I'm gonna whip up a great background in 30 seconds, and Paul was like, no, you're not, and bam, here it is. Everyone loves it. So
it's great.
Martin,
also, he's going to make me a better background. So there's going to be a little background competition going, I guess, if you care about that sort of thing.
Well, if you're not careful, Paul's going to turn you into like some anime creature or whatever. What was that? You showed us after the last time.
I have
a weird stuff going on.
Virtual version of myself in the works.
Oh, I don't. Oh, you're talking about the thing that Pokemon did, right?
VTuber.
VTuber, yeah. It's a good idea. I think the thing that's holding me back personally the most is not my voice. Maybe it is my voice, I don't know. Actually, my voice is kind of annoying, so I better be quiet.
Yeah, it's right up there with your face, but
basically I was gonna go through my face and my voice,
Roasted.
Your brain is good though. You just have to implant it into a whole different human.
His brain's the best. Let's be honest with each other here. It's one of a kind.
We have fun. We have fun on the podcast. We have fun.
We're
Victoria,
gonna have so much.
Welcome. We missed you.
Hi,
we haven't seen you since PAX. It feels like it's been forever.
Oh, it's
welcome.
Victoria. Hi, Victoria. We have great topics. We have one topic in particular I'm so excited for.
No, you can't give that away,
Okay.
William.
Sorry.
I shouldn't have ever told you. You're like a kid at Christmas. You want to open the presents the night before. You can't just wait for Santa.
You shouldn't have told me, Paul. It's all your fault. It's all the Dawalibi special.
We will the same way we had a Cohen's corner. We're gonna have a Collis's corner, just so that William can get this topic out of his system. But that's coming later, guys. Before we dive into that, I just want to tease what's coming on the podcast tomorrow. We talked this week about video games replacing music as the most important aspect of youth culture. Fascinating article on the growth of obviously the video gaming industry outstripping sports, movies, and where music plays in all of that. With that, we also discussed this connected story where it was sort of, I don't know if it was public information or not, but at least someone found out that in the $520 million that Roblox raised, there was an 8-figure sum from Warner Music, specifically Warner Music, which is interesting. And so we discussed the implications of that and where music sort of fits into that whole metaverse conversation.
If you're
Great.
watching the live stream and you're over 21, you can take a drink every time we say metaverse.
You probably shouldn't. You'll be very drunk.
But that seems to be the buzzword of the day. It's literally everywhere now, almost seemingly overnight.
Yeah, don't read any annual reports playing that game.
And then we talked about a few Microsoft stories, specifically 3 of them. One, Phil Spencer, who's the head of Xbox, wanting to make cloud gaming games available for purchase without the Game Pass subscription. So in other words, more like the Stadia model, which I think you can guess how at least I felt about that one. Minecraft Earth shutting down in June. And finally, the last Microsoft story we talked about was how Microsoft attempted to acquire Nintendo 21 years ago, and in fact tried a new partnership. It was, again, this rumor was leaked that they tried a partnership in 2020 even between the two companies, and Nintendo shot that one down as well. So interesting Microsoft stories, and the music and gaming stories. So that's on the podcast tomorrow. We also had a fantastic guest, a guy named Brad Tenenholtz, who is the CEO of a company called CEA, Corporate Esports Association. And what they do is they go to like big companies like GM and Amazon. They get the employees to compete in esports tournaments against each other, and all of the prize money goes to charity, basically. So kind of a fun cause and a fun way to give. So fascinating, really great episode tomorrow. Highly recommend it. But we have a ton of good stories today, guys. Ryan, welcome. Great to have you here. Martin, it's midday here. But Martin, you're in Australia, right? I'm pretty sure you're allowed to drink all day long there.
Yeah, midday is the perfect time to start a drinking game. What do you mean?
I think laughed out of the room. Yeah, that was the article, Victoria, where supposedly the Nintendo executives laughed the Microsoft execs out of the room, which, when you consider the size difference between the two, is somewhat arrogant, especially 21 years ago.
Well, that was my point that I just couldn't resist saying. I was like, that was like Microsoft at the height of their power. I don't care how ridiculous it is. Like I would have at least had gotten them a cup of coffee. You know?
Yeah. I guess not in gaming. They certainly have a lot more investments in gaming now, but yeah, 21 years ago was pretty much peak Windows. It was like Windows 98, literally.
Yeah, peak Microsoft.
Ever heard of it? Windows.
Yeah.
And Apple, right? Yeah. Apple was not even sort of in the equation at that time. Martin says, I'd honestly trust Microsoft to manage the Smash Brothers IP over Nintendo. Well, when you listen tomorrow, Martin, you'll see Microsoft actually tried acquiring like a half dozen game publishers at the time of the release of the first Xbox. And had they succeeded, I think we'd have a very different gaming landscape today. But they were on a very serious sort of acquisition spree, trying to buy these companies. In the end, all they bought was Bungie.
Here's a question for you guys. Do you think we will, at some point in the future, read similar stories that Google tried to buy a number of developers or publishers in the last 2 years that we obviously haven't come to light because there's none that I'm aware of, but I would imagine we'll probably read similar stories because it just goes to show you these people aren't stupid. In order to launch a new console, you need content, exclusive content. The best way to get that is to buy, existing publishers. So I imagine we're going to see similar stories. Hopefully we don't have to wait 21 years to hear about it, but we'll be doing this live stream in 21 years. Paul will be in his VR, whatever.
Or maybe Amazon as well. Like before Amazon did Amazon Game Studios, did they look at augmenting the Twitch acquisition, like with some choice developer or studio purchases? Like
that was the first one I thought of. Yeah,
I would think so.
Look, the takeaway,
they have to have at least tried, right? Like you don't like if your pitch is like, we're gonna go do our own games development, somebody somewhere there has got to ask, is there one you could buy first? There have to have at least been some preliminary discussions,
Guys, I don't know where you want to start today. Like, do we start with something serious or fun? What do you guys feel like? You want something serious to kick off today?
Serious. Let's do serious.
Serious. Yeah. Let's do serious.
I like doing
first.
the fun ones at the end.
Okay, so serious. This is this I thought was very big out of China, and and sometimes, you know, maybe we don't do enough of these stories out of Asia, but this one was from the Esports Observer, and it was a couple of headlines that caught my attention, and it's all in one here. Ping An Bank sponsors Bilibili Gaming, and Chengdu B-Ray invests 7.7 million in Bilibili Esports. Ping An, for those who don't know, is a massive Chinese financial services company. They do all kinds of things, and so the fact that they are sponsoring Bilibili, I thought was interesting. The terms of the deal were not disclosed, but they've signed this strategic partnership. Just to give you a sense, Ping An Insurance has a $207 billion market cap. So this is not a small Chinese company. It's one of the largest. And then the second piece of Bilibili related news here was that this media company did invest $7.7 million in Bilibili Esports, and expects to own a 6% stake in the company. Now, I'm not sure, maybe you guys know, if Bilibili Esports, I believe it's separate from Bilibili, the streaming platform, because I think these numbers sort of make more sense. But we're seeing Bilibili that, here's what's interesting to me, right? In all the conversations around Chinese streaming platforms, Bilibili is always like the third wheel. It always has felt like the also ran. It's always Huya and Douyu, and now Tencent owns both of those. So you expect to hear the big news out of those companies, right? And Bilibili seems to be continuing to make moves, right? They secured the rights for League in that region, and now they're raising money from Ping An, arguably, you know, very, very deep pockets to back you. Are we going to see Bilibili as a legitimate streaming competitor in China? Like, I'm curious what you guys think here. Or will it go the way of Mixer?
Well, they were legitimate first of all, they were legitimate before. I mean, third largest in China is still
true, but meaning
large, right?
The numbers and I think most of the conversation was always around Huya and Douyu.
What's interesting to me is what seems to be happening in China for streaming is sort of what I thought would happen for North America in streaming, which is that you would get multiple providers who compete for original content pipes, like Bilibili buying the LCS rights, right?
Yep.
And even the larger entrenched players, like Douyu, right, struggle because the plucky up and comers can still go get a rights deal, get a differentiated market foothold, and because you can't own all the content, you know, it's difficult to have a true economies of scale process here. And what's weird to me is like we seem to be getting what I thought would happen in North America and China, but we're not getting it in North America. You know,
why do you think that is? I'm curious, William.
Well, you know, maybe because, and I could be wrong here, but I think what we saw in North America was an attempt to woo personalities, right? To try to associate the uniqueness of streaming with the streamers themselves. And what appears to be happening more in China is the publishers and games rights, right? And directly carving out categories of publisher and game for content. I could be wrong, right? But maybe it's the tax that was taken in North America just wasn't the right type of content to be part. Because if you think about it, like Netflix isn't saying exclusive rights to all Tom Cruise movies, right? They're like exclusive rights to Stranger Things. You know, like the reality is like you don't care that the hamburger is made. We don't care what the hamburger is made with if it tastes good. I mean, that's not quite true, but you know what I mean, right? Like you care about the final product, not the sauce or the ingredients that go into it. So, but it is interesting. And it goes back to, I say, like, watch out, North America. Like, I think we're going to have similar conflicts here too. I thought they would have come sooner, but I think they're coming.
Yeah.
Do we think
China, I was going to say, China always seems to be, you know, a few years ahead of us in terms of a lot of these technology things and the trends. You know, you saw with sort of mobile games and stuff like that. Free to play kind of started in China. So I do think, you know, it wouldn't be crazy to see it happening here, like you just sort of prophesized. You know, I guess the question is the market here in the US more mature? I'm just kind of thinking of maybe reasons why it wouldn't fast follow here. Is there just more, of the kind of younger Chinese demographic coming online, and that's why there's more sort of white space for these kind of third players to get in? I don't know.
There's a related question there, which is, with a financial backer like Ping An, could Billy make inroads in the U.S.? Right? We've seen Trovo or whatever. We've surmised that maybe they have ambitions in North America.
Seem to me like the lesson from Mixer wasn't, hey, if only Microsoft had more money, or if only Microsoft threw more dollars around, they would have competed with Twitch. Maybe William's right that the answer was they shouldn't have been buying Mixer. They should have been buying, the Overwatch League, but I doubt that's the right example. But that
meaning instead of buying Ninja, go buy rights for League in North America.
Yeah, this is also where I wonder about motivations behind watching, because the North American market seems much more into the watching as entertainment, whereas in Asia, it seems like there's a lot bigger market for watching for improvement or watching to learn skill and gameplay. So I think that kind of market can maybe at this time support a lot more big players, but the North American market is pretty stuck on the I get my entertainment here and it's comfortable type of thing.
One of the recurring themes that William and I have come back to on the podcast is, it seems like on the team side, all the value is in like having a league franchise, right? That basically, if you look at the top number of teams, like what's common to all of them, remember when we did that sort of top team list, they all have league franchises, right? Is it the case with streaming platforms that having league rights is sort of the barrier to like just get into the conversation?
You're talking about League, like League of Legends.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
League of Legends.
Like the reality is, it's League is a proxy for something, which is certainty. So no, it's nothing special about League, but what it is in the example that Jeff or you had said, I forget, which is maybe they should have bought the Overwatch League. The problem with that is, look, the Overwatch League might have been a massive success and they would have looked really smart doing that. The issue is the certainty piece, right? And the thing that I would think is, the League seems to be about the one property today in the space that behaves with some certainty, right? It reliably seems to do well year to year. It doesn't, in terms of competitors that have launched into the space, it seems to have weathered them successfully, right? Like, and it looks like, in my mind, the market share of the MOBA market is going to look like the market share of most traditionally stable markets, which is your 60-30-20 market, right? Or 60-30-10 market, right? Where there's one big player that commands most of the share, a strong number two, and then a couple tertiary players, on the edges. So I just think it's a proxy for certainty. But anyway.
Neil says, tell them to bring back the World Cyber Games. Neil, I'm assuming you're referring to Microsoft. I can't tell them to do anything. Microsoft, I wish listened to me, but
yeah,
does not. Guys, let's move on. This one, I know all of us wanted to talk about. I was a little worried this might devolve into a real sort of deep rabbit hole of sort of just being a fan.
This is my favorite topic.
But the article here is from Forbes, and the headline is Lucasfilm Games is the future of Star Wars gaming. And the article talks about how Disney and Lucasfilm basically have announced this new umbrella around all new Star Wars games. So it's all going to be under the Lucasfilm's games brand. Obviously, some of the other studios like EA, Respawn are going to continue making Star Wars games, but they're all going to fall under the Lucasfilm games brands. I will link this article. People have asked me to link the articles in the chat, which I will do. And so I thought this was interesting. Anything Star Wars moves the needle in the gaming world. Are we finally going to see a resurgence of two questions? One, will Star Wars games come back in a really big way? Because I would argue there's been a little bit of a drought in terms of the quality of Star Wars games, given how good the IP is. And two, is this Disney sort of separating themselves from the gaming for whatever reason, right? Like, why not put this under the Disney brand? Why put it under a separate brand? I'm curious what you guys think about that, and if you think it's purposeful here on Disney's part.
Well, I think just last point. I mean, it had always been a Lucas property, right? Clearly from when Star Wars was bought. And even, you know, when Disney was in gaming, I believe it was LucasArts was the studio. So I don't think that last part's, you know, super out of left field. Like, I don't think that's super surprising. I don't know.
Well, I mean, like if you go on Disney Plus today, right? It doesn't say Lucasfilms, right? It says Disney in the top, and then it says Star Wars.
Yeah, but when you watch a Star Wars movie, there you definitely see that Lucasfilm logo as like a produced, you know, in the beginning of the movie.
Disney is not shy about editing their logo into the things they acquire. Go watch Pixar movies. I guarantee you.
But you do also see the Pixar, but it's
you do,
not,
you do, but Disney is very much Disney branding primacy, right? Like they want you to know they own it because it's part of their appeal. So I almost think this says more about Disney and their allergy to gaming than it does about the strength of the Lucasfilm Games brand. Because like, first of all, like the brand Lucasfilm Games, like, and granted that has warm resonance to me, but it's
a weird name.
Yeah, like let's be honest, right? Like that is somebody shoehorning an existing IP into something to, you know, it's a bit weird, right? But you know, the other thing is, to me, it seems like I've often said this for a while, that the best storytelling in Star Wars has been happening in its games for decades. Like Knights of the Old Republic still may be the best Star Wars story outside of the first 3 films, right? I mean, like there's some rose-colored glasses there. I'm sure it's not as good as I remember, but certainly, like, I played Jedi Fallen Order this year. That was a really good Star Wars story. Really good. It felt more in touch with the Star Wars universe than a lot of the recent films did to me. So I think as Lucas and Disney is probably trying to figure out what they do with the Star Wars brand now, because I don't think it's a brand in distress, but I think it's a brand that needs evaluation and management, because whatever strategy it's going to have going forward, I think it might not be what they had previously or had been thinking of previously, right? Given the reception for episode 9 in particular. I would hope that they're looking at gaming as an avenue to anchor the brand in a more reliable way, because they see the success of the games that they've had. And I would hope that they consider, and I hope that maybe the Lucasfilm call out here is speaking to maybe a little bit more creative freedom and a little bit more independence for the direction that gaming is going to take for them, to allow it to explore new areas of IP development for them.
I hope it's a little bit like a mea culpa for, I mean, when they acquired LucasArts and fired all the game developers for Star Wars years and years ago, and then, you know, partnered with EA to make one of the most unpopular games of all time that was largely hated on the internet, and then partnered with Respawn to make a single player game when they could have made a multiplayer game. I hope that kind of shifting direction back into LucasArts or Lucas Games, Lucasfilms Entertainment, whatever it's called, I hope that that's a way of Disney doing exactly what you said, William, and kind of giving some control back to the people who started the franchise and made successful games before. So, and Disney does not have a good track record in terms of the Star Wars games that they've created compared to the previous games from LucasArts. So hopefully some of the old stuff is brought back a little bit more successfully.
This whole thing seems trivial, right? Like you could argue it's totally trivial. It's just some umbrella company. They're still probably going to make all the same Star Wars games they were going to make, right? I think where I struggle with this one is every effort Disney has made in business over the last few years, I feel, has been to bring Star Wars to a younger audience, right? Even though most of the Star Wars movies are horrible, the new ones, the idea was to bring them to a younger audience and, you know, create kind of like the same Marvel effect, but in the Star Wars universe. And then why take a brand like Lucasfilm, not even LucasArts, Lucasfilm, right? That has it has zero mind share in the mind of your average 8-year-old, right? Who's just discovering Star Wars for the first time. Like, why bring that back and not reinforce Disney games, Disney gaming, right? Like, I really feel like there's an aversion to gaming at Disney, and I don't fully understand it. Like, William, you always say Disney's the model of where every company should eventually end up, but I don't really understand their weird aversion to gaming.
Well, Sorry, William, go ahead.
No, Jeff, you go. I want Jeff.
I was just gonna say, I mean, you guys seem to be, you seem to be taking this as like Disney pushing or stiff arming gaming away. To me, this feels like Disney dipping its toe very gently back in the waters of gaming, kind of taking back some autonomy from EA, expanding the license to more games. I mean, EA over the last decade put out 3 Star Wars games that they've had that license. I would have bet, over the next 10 years, we see 15 Star Wars games. Now, is that good for Star Wars, the brand? Maybe, maybe not. It kind of really depends on execution. But you could make an argument. I think the argument that I would make is that this could be the first domino that we're seeing. Bob Iger is no longer running Disney, right? He was the one who famously was against gaming. We don't really know. I think the new CEO is Bob Chapek or whatever. I don't know if he's publicly commented around gaming. Gaming's clearly hot right now. I could make an argument that this might be Disney's first kind of little steps towards buying a studio, getting back into gaming. Buying a publisher or a developer. So I would look at it that way rather than, hey, why didn't they call it Disney versus Lucasfilm Arts or whatever? I think I would look at it more on the positive side than the negative.
But Jeff, given all of Disney's IP, right? If I'm an analyst following Disney, wouldn't the first question I'd be asking be something like, why isn't your gaming business the size of an Activision Blizzard? Right? You have more IP than they do. You have, 100 years in media. You understand this better than anyone else. Like, why is your gaming business not 10 times bigger than it is today? Like,
100%. I mean, I would be, that would be one of the first questions if I'm a Disney shareholder. I mean, they've done a great job in the last year or so rolling out Disney Plus, doing a good job getting into subscription, kind of following the Netflix business model. You can make a very good argument that your point is great. Like, should the next business model you follow not be Activision or EA? Like, why are you not creating a gaming business? And the CEO's response might be, well, did you see what we just did? Like, we kind of are, taking it step by step. Like, we're taking our games back. We're going to start having a little bit more autonomy, have Ubisoft make a game, blah, blah, blah. Who knows? Maybe this is the first step in them buying Ubisoft or something like that. I
think Victoria's comment is super telling here, right? She says, I didn't even know Disney was in the space. Definitely hopeful that they get the right people behind the wheel.
Well, they're not. I guess that's the point, right? They haven't been.
Yeah, and there's very little direct association between Disney and gaming, right? They have not drawn sort of a direct line. They definitely put out games, right?
Yeah.
There's no, like, they've never sort of taken ownership of it, which I've always found kind of weird.
Yeah. Well, you could argue they actively have not, which, we can say that's a bad strategy. I 100% think it is. You 100% think it is. But at least it's a strategy. It's not like they're in gaming, but we're just like you're doing a terrible job. They're just like, we're not in gaming. Okay, fine. You do a lot of other things well. So I don't want to give them too much, heartache, because they've done a good job with what they focus on. They just have actively not focused on it, which as a company, like, that's important to know what you don't want to focus on rather than trying to do everything.
Guys, let's move on. Let's talk about another IPO, because I think we had fun last week with the whole Roblox discussion.
Did love Roblox. Could talk about it all day. It's so fun.
William, I'm curious, actually, for those of you who watched the live stream last week, Jeff and I have a bet.
Yeah.
Okay. And the bet is in 2 years, my view is Roblox's daily active user number will be bigger than Twitter's daily active user number in 2 years.
And specifically that it'll be what, 180 million?
No, it just has to be bigger, right? Like,
I don't remember what the exact bet was. That was the spirit. That was the spirit of it.
What side of the bet am I taking?
Well,
that's what I'm asking you.
I would bet that that's the case. I wouldn't bet against that.
There you go. See?
Okay.
Wait, would you bet against that, Jeff?
Yeah. 180 million daily active users is egregious.
Yeah.
Like, there's almost not that many people who on the planet who play console video games on a daily basis. I would bet that's higher than the entire console DAU.
Yeah.
Think about it. The entire console install base, like the amount of people who have ever bought an Xbox and a PlayStation, is about 200 million people.
But Jeff, you're missing my favorite platform of all time,
PC.
Yeah.
Mobile. They don't
Well,
have a mobile. Roblox has nothing in mobile.
Roblox has nothing in mobile, or you
Yeah, but what can you add off of a mobile? Oh my god, I'm actually torn. This is actually more of an interesting bet than I had thought. Right?
I thought Roblox did have
There was
mobile.
a lot of daily Roblox.
I don't think
Roblox
so.
don't have mobile?
Had 180.
I thought they did. I don't know.
They must have. They can't be as big as they are without a mobile. Wait, Lindsay, which side of the bet did you take?
Oh, Twitter, undoubtedly.
Wait, that it would be bigger than Twitter?
No. I took the side that Twitter would still continue.
In
It's-
2 years, if we compare the daily active user numbers, which one will be bigger? That's fundamentally it. Martin says, is Twitter on the decline, or because I take that bet Roblox doesn't pass that? I'll put money with anyone in the chat who wants to bet. This is how certain I am of this outcome.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's talk about the IPO from today, actually. And this was Motorsports Games. There's no really good article on it. There's a couple that are so. But basically, let me give you just some of what happened here. They were expected to price the IPO at $16 to $18 a share. It was Canaccord who was the book runner here.
Great Canadian investment bank.
Canadian investment bank that actually knows gaming pretty well, has a history in taking companies public in the gaming space. And the company recorded net income of $875,000 on revenue of $16 million for this year, basically for the 9 months ended September 30th, 2020. And what ended up happening was they increased the IPO range from $16 to $18 to $19 to $20, and they ended up going public at $20 a share. And immediately the shares were trading at 75% higher than that. So where they were trading at like $35 a share or something like that. They actually closed, I think, guys, maybe someone can look it up quickly. I think they closed at they closed at $35. So
75%.
75% increase in the same day. Now, let me just show you this other article, because this is sort of summarizes my feelings on this perfectly. Not that I don't think this is a great company, great IPO, it's all fine. This was the headline that really I agree with. Affirm and Motorsport Games show the stock market's IPO process is still broken. Right? The fact that in some ways the bankers here walked away with the lion's share of the dollars, and that this IPO was so badly mispriced, you could argue, again, or you could argue there's just no way to even predict how much excitement and enthusiasm there's going to be around gaming IPOs. But I'm curious where you guys fall on this fence. Is it that everyone is just the bankers are all just greedy and mispricing these things? Or is it that everyone is fundamentally massively underestimating the demand and the hype for gaming company stock?
Well, can I connect this to the conversation we just had around Microsoft buying Nintendo back in the day,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
20 years ago. Because kind of the point you were making there, is, oh my God, wouldn't it have been incredible if Microsoft had bought Nintendo, right?
Yeah.
It would have been such a great deal. Who cares what they had to pay for it at the time? The gaming space is so hot. It would have been the best acquisition in Microsoft's history. And by the way, we can point to real acquisitions they've done, like Minecraft, and say something very similar, right? So could it not just be that, and this is you, I mean, I'm kind of parroting back your words to you, gaming is such a phenomenal space to be in today, that the answer is, look, like these businesses, it doesn't matter if they're just a motorsport mobile company. These businesses have so much runway with the growth of interactive entertainment that who cares what we're pricing them at today? $20, $30, doesn't matter. The space is going to triple in the next 10 years anyway. So, literally just tread water and you're significantly more valuable. Now, I can argue a different side on this, but I kind of am curious, Paul. I feel like this sort of begs your own argument back against you here,
Well, yes, except like you break down the numbers, right? They sold 3 million shares at $20 a share, okay? Proceeds of $60 million to the company, okay? If they sold those shares at $35, which is what they ended the day at, right? That would have been $105 million in terms of proceeds to the company. we're talking about $45 million that went to essentially, I'm exaggerating here, but call it friends and clients of Canaccord and the book runners, right? Instead of to the company. If I'm Motorsport Games, yes, I'm thrilled. And I'm sure the management's thrilled because they probably all have stock at $5 or $2, right? But there's still $45 million here that was left on the table when the company raised a total of 60. Right?
Yeah, but I could
half.
raise the counterpoint, and I'm not really defending the bankers here, but just hypothetically, I could raise a counterpoint, which is the business executives know, like they're also agreeing. No one's making them go public, right? Like they're agreeing to that valuation, you know. And
true,
like,
but they're trusting the bankers, right? It's Canaccord telling them we should price it at $20.
But so
right?
if it was like 5 or 10% off, but 50% off,
75% off,
75% off, right? Like that, like if that would be like me walking over to Microsoft and be like, hey, I heard you bought Bethesda for $7 billion. I think it's worth $2 billion, and I'll happily pay you that for, you know, if they're, I mean, I don't really believe the things I'm saying right now, but the point I'm making is like the company does have to go along with this to some extent as well.
Oh yeah. I mean, everyone of course goes in with eyes wide open. I mean, but this goes back to, you know, we talked a couple podcasts or live streams ago about Roblox pulling back their IPO because I imagine they would have been up 300 or 400%, you know, based on actually they were talking about versus where they raised in a private round
based on the metaverse.
Based off the metaverse drink.
We know the numbers exactly, Jeff, right? Because they raised,
it was like
they were talking about a $7 billion valuation, and they just did the round at 30. So
right,
literally,
so that would have all been captured by you know, like you said, the friends and family or whatever. So I do think, you know, there is something going on in the IPO market. And this has been a topic. And just to be clear, this really isn't a gaming specific problem. This has been all, you know, a lot of recent hot IPOs, particularly tech IPOs. I wouldn't even, you know, Motorsport Games, let's be honest, that's not a hot IPO. Like, you know, there wasn't the people clamoring over their shoes to get this. You know, so this is a market, you know, a capital markets problem. And that's why you're seeing the rise of SPACs, direct listings. You know, none of these things are super interesting probably to people listening to the podcast, but I just want to make that clear. This isn't necessarily like, hey, this is a gaming problem.
But gaming is fundamentally part of the problem because there's so much excitement around it, right? Part of it is I think trouble pricing these things. Like I would like to give the bankers more of the benefit of the doubt and just say, you know, this is not purposeful. They're not trying so hard to line their pockets that egregiously, right? It's more, there's no way to really estimate the demand right now because there's so much demand, right? Is it like, and you don't want to risk going out too high and then falling flat. So everyone sort of is conservative in their estimates by nature in these things. But then I think it speaks like part of the problem, and it's happening in some pieces of the tech industry as well, more broadly. But part of the problem is why they're being underpriced here is gaming's so hot, right, Jeff? I mean, like, it's not just a structural issue with capital markets. I think it has to do with the fact that the space is so hot that pricing these things is actually really hard. Estimating demand is really hard.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely fair. I mean, like you said, to your point, it is ideally you would like the bankers to maybe get it a little bit closer, but definitely, you know, from a from a employee's perspective and the executives, like they are definitely a lot happier this way than they would be if they, you know, priced it 75% higher and it was down 75%. Let's just get that out there too.
The weirder thing about this we should point out is there are mechanisms to price this accurately and deliver the value, right? There's auctions, right? Like I'm just pointing out, like the market, like when it's difficult to price assets, the market has solutions to solve this. This is why like eBay works. How much is that junk Pez dispenser in my basement worth? 30 cents or $5,000? I have no idea. But I can post a picture of it and maybe it turns out my Chewbacca Pez is valuable, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you could do a direct listing. The problem with that is, you know, then you don't have support of a market maker. It does, you know, we've seen companies do that. And like, it's not always the best outcome for the company. You do save some money, and there's like Slack did that. And I think the stock went down.
Did Google do a direct listing too?
Google did. I don't know. I forget, you know, how they're kind of, obviously it's worked out well over time, but I don't know first month or whatever, how that worked out.
Yeah. Interesting.
I think, before we move on from the story, I think it's interesting to just talk about the racing market. That's clearly one, something that's hot right now. We saw Hutch, which is a mobile game developer, got sold to Modern Times. We saw Codemasters big, buyout war between EA and Take-Two. And I think it kind of comes back to esports to some extent. I think what we saw during the pandemic and the interest in racing esports has kind of bled over to the actual publishing of the games, and it's just creating a little bit of like a hype cycle in specifically the racing genre, which is generally not one that's super hot. Typically it doesn't monetize that well. These games don't sell that much. It doesn't really work on mobile, but right now it's super hot. So
yeah, it's almost a historical footnote. Like, back in the day, gaming was like, it was almost a tech demo for new systems. It wasn't really a genre in and of itself. So
I mean, sim racing's hot. I remember seeing an article from a few months ago, like if you looked at Google searches and how during the pandemic, like everything sim racing and sim racing hardware like massively spiked, and companies like Fanatec, like with My Racing Wheels and Setup and the whole bit, like these companies that sell premium sim racing gear, like just can't keep anything in stock either. I think it's a function of everyone being at home more and trying to get outdoor type experiences still indoors, right? Like I miss racing real cars. So, my sim racing setup is about as close as I can get. And so I think there's definitely I agree. There is also hype around that specific space piece of the industry, which probably was working in motorsports, like motorsports benefit here, right? Like there's definitely an increased amount of hype in that sim racing world. Victoria says the hype's real. People who know nothing about the industry are looking for opportunities to get a foot in. I mean, Victoria, it's totally true. And you have everyone with a Robinhood account figuring out sort of where they should place their bet. And I think this is why you get these massive sort of first day. That's the other piece, Jeff, which is I think the bankers are struggling to estimate the retail appetite, right? It's sort of easy for a banker to price and get a feeling for, what the institutional guys are going to do.
Yeah.
But I think the retail market on the investment side has exploded so much, is so pervasive. Everyone thinks buying stocks is easy because they always go up. And so like the retail market all of a sudden is very hard to measure and hard to estimate.
I do think that's accurate.
Anyways, let's move on, guys. Let's do a little bit more light one. But this one, I think, again, could become a rabbit hole. This is Dr. Disrespect, who I love. And this was from Daily Esports. He says, Dr. Disrespect speaks on the current nightmare that gaming is undergoing. Okay? And specifically, I just want to read his tweet here. He writes, just woke up from a nightmare. Then I realized it wasn't a nightmare. It's actually real. Where are the new games at? Where's the next battle royale, the next big first-person shooter, the game built for streaming, $120 billion industry? Okay, so very critical, obviously. And then let me just pause here for a second. He got some replies, okay, to this tweet from some very famous gamers and streamers. And I want you guys to figure out what the common thread here is, because for me, it was obvious right away, and I kind of love it. Tim the Tatman said, all I want is an MMO. This is from earlier, so they're showing how other people have expressed this. All I want for 2019 is an MMORPG that has good progression / PvP. And FaZe Jev said, this shit looks so good. I just want to get completely absorbed by an MMORPG. And so you get a lot of big fans, big streamers, big gamers calling for MMOs. Which was not necessarily mentioned directly in Dr. Disrespect's tweet.
Paul, were we supposed to figure out that MMORPGs were the common thread based on two
comments?
I
want to put my tinfoil hat on for a second. It would be very, very, very interesting if this was all a marketing scheme by someone like Riot, who's trying to market their next MMO and saying, oh, it would be creative. Let's pay these people to complain about how gaming has become so corporatized and all the games are the same and blah, blah, blah. Oh, wouldn't it be nice if we all just wanted an MMORPG? Oh, boom, Riot just announced one the next day. Like, oh, what are the odds? Like, that's what we were looking for. We all just happened to want that.
Yeah, how did that happen?
Yeah, let's put our tinfoil hat on.
I like the tinfoil theory, but there is definitely like an interesting business conversation here, which is, why has this category been ignored and you know, we've talked about the World of Warcraft sort of impact and effect and how they're sort of unbeatable, but it seems to me like there's this continued demand for the genre. No one has filled that space. Riot seems to be the only one with the guts now to sort of maybe take it on, but we're talking years from now. Is there any, in that context, is there any validity to Dr. Disrespect's feeling here, point here? Is there a business conversation to be had here? Like, why is he feeling frustrated?
Okay, I would point out, by the way, that this is I've got on my soapbox for a second here.
Yeah.
I'm just going to read you a Forbes article that came out recently, right?
Okay.
It was I don't see a date on this. This is top 10 best upcoming new MMORPGs for 2021 and beyond.
Okay.
And there are a lot. Ashes of Creation, Blue Protocol, Crimson Desert, Crowfall, which has had a big following for a while. I know many of my friends have been psyched for that one. Ilion, Lost Ark, Magic Legends, right? That's, I believe, the Magic the Gathering IP coming into an MMO. We have New World, the Amazon Games MMO. We have Pantheon, Rise of the Fallen. We have Phantasy Star Online 2. I mean, I can keep going here.
William,
The point is, yeah.
Hold on, before you make your point, I'm just for fun, if you can find the same list for 2020, I can almost guarantee like 80% of those names are the same.
Well, but you're kind of making my point for me, which is why aren't there? Because first of all, these games take a massively long time to develop. It's not like making a fighting game where you have two characters in an arena and you actually have 100% working prototype, right? Like, they're massive endeavors. They have huge development cycles, right? That's one. Two is, because they're network effects driven, they fail like all the time, right? And we tend to only remember the games that succeed and not the games that jump into the dustbin, right? So even though these things constantly launch, they don't do anything. And so it feels like nothing launched because nothing changed in the market, right? And the third thing is that by nature of MMORPGs, you can't have the funnel of indie content that propels a lot of the traditional game industries. Like, smaller publishers just, the scale of content and the difficulty of running, you know, a large server persistent driven world, right, is just only the larger businesses can really try to take a crack at it credibly, right? So that also by nature just limits the number of people who can enter the space. So structurally, it's a hard space. Like, the reason why it's not there all the time, it's like, it would be like me saying this, like, oh, why aren't there any new big car companies? We had Tesla, and look how successful they were. Why aren't there 5 or 6 other amazing new car companies for me to choose between? There's a feature I want in my car. I want flying cars. Everyone said we've wanted that for a while. It's so obvious. Why isn't it? The answer is because it's a structurally awful market to try to enter. So there's not a lot of change in the market. That same for MMOs.
Here's the bigger question. Here's the question.
That
for
was a
Lindsay
great
and
point,
Jeff.
by the way.
I like it.
I'm sorry. That was like a
Agree.
great point.
Well,
Agree. But hold on. Let me just ask a question to Lindsay and Jeff for a second, which is, if we just talked about how exciting and Motorsports IPO and massive demand from investors, right? Those same investors, if they're watching this live stream, right, who are all now gung-ho about getting in, okay? And then they see this tweet from Dr. Disrespect. As an industry, should we be worried about what he's bringing up here? Or does it not have any impact? Like, is it material, Lindsay, in your mind?
No, because he's bemoaning network effects, which do stink, but the problem is they're almost impossible to change, and the rest of the industry outside of MMOs is unaffected by them. So I don't think it changes much for games that aren't MMOs. And if you want to bet on an MMO, you probably don't want to bet on an MMO. So I don't think it changes much in terms of new companies that are coming up really at all.
But meaning, like, Dr. Disrespect, fundamentally what he's saying here, and I'm putting words in his mouth, is that there's no good games to play right now, right? That's the crux of his complaint.
Yeah.
If you're an investor looking at the industry, right, do you think that statement should have any impact on your bullishness or bearishness at all?
There are millions of games to play. I think that I mean, it makes sense where he's coming from. And as a professional streamer, you know, it's a job. And so he goes through a lot more than the average consumer. But no, I don't think that his opinion trickles down to, you know, a high schooler that has built a PC at home and has access to Steam's entire library and has a little bit more time and incentive to experiment. Whereas someone who is a streamer needs to play popular games to make money and is probably bored by the popular games that are out there and the lack of variety. So
I kind of, although I was fighting back on the MMO point, I kind of agree in the general point. I do think we're in a bit of a games drought right now, personally. I don't know, Paul, do you agree?
I mean, I hate agreeing with that, right? Because I want to be the optimist, but like, I agree that the games themselves are not moving as fast from an immersion and technology and sort of entertainment standpoint as I would like them to, personally, right? Like, there's no game that I feel like, even after a long day of work and I'm exhausted, I have to just go put in an hour, right? And there have been games.
Here's the reason why we might be in a games drought. I mean, how long does it take to build a game? 2 years,
at least 2 or 3 years, right?
2 years. Well, pull up a stock chart for Activision, EA, Take-Two. All of them in 2018 got crushed because everyone thought Fortnite was taking over the industry. There was no more barriers to entry. Everything was going free to play. Why would you develop a game for console? These stocks got cut literally like in half. Now, I'm kind of being a little bit simplistic, but if you were investing in gaming in 2018, you probably weren't creating a new console, like, upfront payment title. It just, I could imagine there would be a little bit of a lull potentially. The point I was going to make about Dr. Disrespect, first of all, just thinking about this from a business perspective, it's definitely not surprising at all that we're seeing, the same trend we saw in Hollywood over the last 20 years in terms of moving to bigger franchises, tentpoles, blockbusters, sequels, because it's actually lower risk, right? Everyone knows that, you spend a ton of money on marketing, you have an IP that everybody knows, and that's kind of how you have the lower risk. You don't see indie movies really being made, kind of star-driven movies doesn't exist anymore. It's all IP driven and franchise driven. We're seeing the same thing in gaming, so that's not a surprise. And then my final point is Dr. Disrespect perpetuates this network effect. I looked at his top games played on Twitch. It's literally PUBG, Call of Duty Warzone, Fortnite, Call of Duty Black Ops, and Apex Legends. And he was getting paid to play a lot of those games.
So that's Lindsay's point, Jeff. Like, he has to play those games.
No,
right?
He doesn't. If he wants to not, he doesn't. That's my whole point.
He's the violence, speed, momentum guy. He's not going to go play Stardew Valley.
Is he really
that person that has influence who can actually help break the network effect? If he starts playing some cool new indie game, it could actually build a community around that game. He's not doing that. So he's talking out of his ass, and he's basically perpetuating the exact problem that he's now bemoaning. So I don't want to hear anything more from Dr. Disrespect about this problem.
It does sound like he wants the next big thing. And it's like, you can't just make the next big thing pop
There's
up.
one, like XQC does that very well. He plays a lot of variety and sort of stupid little indie games and still gets a huge audience, right? The problem is Dr. Disrespect's character is so specific, right? Like it's really shooters, violence, speed, momentum. Like, you can't just go play some indie game where you blow bubbles. Like, it's just, he can't do that.
I'm not sure I agree with that.
Unicorn Hour and put on the most bubble blowing game and still be his angry self and just laugh.
I think it might be more fun if he's playing
Don't steal my bubble blower game idea now.
But the fact that he's not is his fault, I think.
I just want to read these two comments. Chris says games drought. There have never been more new IPs that dropped like 2020. Yeah, but I think let me just bring up this article, Chris, because it's reinforced here. It's a PC Gamer article. I knew someone was going to say this. Like, this is kind of the general feeling right now that, there's not a lot, like there are games that drop, but nothing that is sort of, it's been like Fall Guys and then Among Us and then Rust. And it was like, that's kind of the year, right? And I think people like the guys like Dr. Disrespect are looking for the more immersive experiences that aren't so like transitory, that don't come and go. I think to Martin's comment, this is an interesting discussion, which is he mentioned specifically, let me bring it up here, games built for streaming. And this is maybe where I had the biggest issue with his comment, which is I fundamentally think this is part of the problem with the industry is I hate this idea of building games for streaming, because then automatically I feel like the shelf life is short, right? As soon as the streamers get sort of tired of it, everyone stops playing it and the game goes away. Fundamentally,
it is a bit, to Jeff's point, like a bit, please give me the exact thing I want. Like I'm a streamer who does FPS. I would like a big new AAA FPS to sponsor me. And also please have designed the game to be really good for streaming, because I'm a streamer and that's my audience, like
true.
But yeah, no, but I kind of want to address that. I do think there's a reason why we're in a bit of a games drought right now, guys. And I just want to, it's not like it's just structural. It's very simple. It's, first of all, it always feels this way a little bit post holidays, because many of the biggest titles get out pre-holiday, right? To have a sales ramp into it. So you always have a dry start to the year, back half, because the big titles are out by October, right? That's sort of the first reason, right? Second reason is this year we had a mammoth title coming to market, Cyberpunk. It did not live up necessarily to the hype, but definitely what do you do with blockbuster movies or tentpole events? You schedule their launches at different times, so you're not competing with another blockbuster or tentpole event, right? So it's sort of obvious that publishers and people, if they're choosing, do we polish this a little and go Q2 or try for Q4 2020? Like, many publishers and teams probably made the decision, you know what? Cyberpunk's going to have that narrative. Like, let's not try to compete and risk the sales. Let's push it out a little bit and come into so that's second reason. Third reason is we're in a console cycle change, right? And let's be realistic. A large portion of the gaming is still console, and it's really tough. Like, do you really want to be launching your big new AAA game right as a console generation is turning over, right? You don't. You either want to be purpose built for the next generation and give it time, or you want to get it in well before, the last hurrah in the old generation. So I think there's just structural reasons why. And I think Jeff's point is very good too. Probably there is a little bit of a lag given stock prices and what investment was driven in original IP. But I think all of these things are going to turn around pretty quickly. I think in particular, like, these are all very short-term effects I'm describing. None of them they're structural, but none of them are long-term. So
yeah.
Anyway,
I would add in even a fourth point. I mean, we had the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So work from home starting in March. We know of games that were delayed because of the pandemic. Yeah. So these are just like, real world things that slow down development. Nothing theoretical about it. And your third point kind of meld together too. I mean, look at Cyberpunk, how epically it failed on last gen because they tried to straddle last gen and next gen. You need, they're two different pieces of hardware. You need to optimize for one of them, or else you're kind of going to screw yourself for both of them. So I think there are probably a lot of developers. Look, for example, at Battlefield. I mean, EA pushed Battlefield because, depending on who you listen to, it might have been because their DICE is in a whole world of trouble, but they also pushed it because they wanted to optimize it for next-gen consoles and let the next-gen consoles build up an install base. So I think it's a very real-world reason why that we might be feeling this low, and I think it's mostly the console cycle.
Victoria agrees completely. This is why she's one of the smartest people in the gaming space. Says, was just going to say, I bet it's somewhat lined up with console release. There you go. Agrees wholeheartedly with you. Guys, I want to move on. I have a special segment this week. I like doing these special segments. And the segment this week is things no one except William predicted. And as part of this special segment this week, we've got an article, we've got a news story from dualshockers.com. And the headline here is, Heroes of the Storm esports scene is surging thanks to grassroots leagues like Heroes Hearth. So, William, over to you.
Wait, Paul, before we do this, can you scroll down? Or, scroll up?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it wasn't written. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't written by William.
Yes, right.
This is not a sponsored story.
Check the bottom, #ad William Collis.
That's right. Like,
we just have to make sure our viewers are getting, real information.
Truth, right?
Fake news.
That's it. Fake news.
This is, there's a couple things I want to point out here. First of all, I will say surging, but it's all relative to the base, right? So this is we're still not League of Legends here, but It's interesting. It does go back to, I've been, for people who don't know, and I don't know how you can't know this, I've been the biggest fan of Heroes of the Storm for pretty much forever. I think it's a brilliant game. And, I do think it was a bit of a victim of Blizzard deciding that, there was going to basically playing Kingmaker in esports and deciding that Overwatch was going to be the king and cutting all the other activities around it prematurely, right? And, we can rightly or wrongly say that's the case. Could you ever really credibly compete with a juggernaut like League when it has such an entrenched user base? There's multiple sides to the story. But fundamentally, I take this in a very, very good way, which is if you have a truly good game, and I really believe Heroes of the Storm, I probably played that game for more hours than any other game I've ever played, even including World of Warcraft, right? Even including that. I think it's a really good game. It goes to show you when you have good games, sometimes they bubble to the surface. Sometimes they return. That quality does count for something in this industry. It's not just marketing dollars and sponsored streams. It's actually, if you fundamentally have a good underlying property, it might take a while. It might go slowly. It might require the community to get it going for you, all of these things. But, good games don't die. Just the same way Super Mario 3 is still getting speedrun today because it was a good game back then and it's found a life today. The same can be true for even competitive games like MOBAs. So I think it's a lovely story. And for me personally, it's awesome because faster queue times. Right?
Yeah, congratulations, Williams. 6 playing buddies recruited more people.
That's right. We all brought a friend.
We all brought a friend.
A news article.
But seriously, one of the earliest I remember, William, discussions we had on the podcast, and I guarantee you it's probably like 100 episodes ago, right? Was a discussion around your Activision Blizzard, right? You have basically unlimited resources. Why wouldn't you put make some kind of effort to have a Heroes esports scene, right? Like, again, it doesn't have to be Overwatch League level. It doesn't have to be, but to have nothing to me and still support the game I never understood. And it'd be interesting. I'm curious to get all of your opinions, call it 2 years later since we had that first discussion, why you think that is. Why not support this?
You know what? Let me go last. Let our friends Lindsay and Jeff get in, and I'll kind of give my 2 cents.
You can start.
Okay. Well, I agree with William's point that I think that they just tried to play Kingmaker and toss everything into Overwatch League, and that got a lot of hype, and they let Heroes of the Storm fall by the wayside. And luckily, like William said, since it was a game that built up some type of grassroots community, they didn't lose completely and were able to kind of bring it back when the community demanded it. I mean, one of the things that I like the most about gaming is that it's very responsive to the people who are actually playing the games, and I think that this is definitely a case of that.
But Lindsay, do you think it's fundamentally a lack of resources or just not wanting to spread their focus? Is that, you think, internally?
Do you really want to talk about Bobby Kotick's management strategy again?
Yeah,
we're going to get him on the podcast
to
talk about
teaching that management strategy. That is
before we start, continuing to shit on Bobby.
I'm just curious.
Let's be honest about. I mean, if you bought Activision Blizzard the day Bobby became the CEO, you're doing pretty. I bet the stock 1,000%. Like it's like it's like a Netflix type return.
Guys, hold on. I want to make sure everyone understands my position on Activision Blizzard because I've said it many times, but for some reason I think people misinterpret my views on the business. If someone came to me today, right, and said, "Should I invest my money in Activision Blizzard?" My answer would be, "How long are you going to hold the stock?" Right? If you're going to hold it for a year or two, I would say buy Activision Blizzard all day long. This is going to do you very well. Bobby knows how to make money quarter to quarter, right? If someone came to me and said, should I buy Activision Blizzard and hold it for the next 10 years because it's going to be part of my retirement portfolio? My view is that's probably a bad bet, because I think once the result of sort of all this short-term game plays out, then I think the business may struggle. Even though the industry is going to continue to grow, I think Activision Blizzard may struggle in year 5 or year 6 or whatever. I don't.
The only pushback.
I'm not like bearish on Activision Blizzard.
I would have for you on that is that that may be the case from what we can see outwardly what they're investing in, but there might be a lot more going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. One and two, I think Bobby has proven himself to be a fantastic game because I don't think he's a gamer. He's clearly not. But he is a fantastic allocator of capital, right? Like he bought when he first started, he bought Activision Blizzard, built Activision. Then they bought Blizzard for a steal, right? They got Blizzard for like a couple $1 billion. Now it's probably worth, 30. They bought back stock from Vivendi at a very, very low price. They bought King. Guess how much they bought King for? It was like
steal.
Yeah, it was like $2 billion. Candy Crush makes $2 billion a year.
No argument.
My point is, I think that if you have a person like that who has proven himself to be a great allocator of capital, that's someone I would argue that I would be comfortable giving my money to, because he will find that next investment. We've talked about this, we joked about it. I thought he was going to buy Roblox. Like he will find something like that I think he will buy, and he will get it at a good price.
That's what people misunderstand.
It's more
That's
of
why I say
perspective.
If you're going to hold it 2 years, that I'm saying bet on Bobby, right? I think Bobby, I don't know how long he plans on being there. My simple view is he's probably there another couple of years. I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe he's there another 10, but my view, he's there at least probably another couple. And so that's why I say, if you're going to bet on it for the next 2 year, like time horizon, good bet. Because the guy knows how to put up big numbers quarter to quarter, right? Where I worry is the day Bobby leaves and you don't have a deal guy like him at the helm, nearly as good as him, right? And you've sort of gutted the game piece because it's not his realm of expertise, right? What happens to the business then?
Well,
that's my concern.
The Heroes of the Storm plays exactly into that. As in, it's a really good game, but it didn't catch on very quickly. It was very popular among the community that it was popular among, but it wasn't like a bright, shiny object that was a clear way to make a ton of money. Luckily, the community was able to keep it alive, and now they can kind of circle back to it and put some time and energy and resources into it. But if you're going for a purely profit-driven strategy and you make a really good game that doesn't catch on, then it's just going to be a really good game that doesn't catch on.
True.
I'm glad the way I've convinced you all that it's a really good game, and like nobody's arguing the converse.
I specifically said really good game to the community who thinks it's a really good game.
Well, but like the thing I want to remind us is like, look at what the world looked like back when these decisions were being made about these leagues, right? I think the world back then, it was almost unquestioned that the sports paradigm applied to esports, right? I think certainly with the rise of the Overwatch League, they were the ones who looked so smart being out front saying like they didn't just look so smart. They were so smart being out front saying this is just going to be like football, but for games, right? And in that model, why would you want to own baseball too, right? There's already been a baseball. It's League of Legends. It's one, right? It's got its space going. You had your shot. Maybe you thought you could disrupt it with better IP or something. You hit the market. You clearly didn't do that. You believe it's a winner-take-all market for each genre or type. Why would you continue to invest into that? Like, that is a great strategic decision in my mind, with that worldview, right? It's super disciplined. It's, look, we can say everything we want about, we made a great game, we have the best IP, we can't win. We saw that at launch. We're going to cut it off right now. So I think you have to remember the worldview right now. I think the decision to pull capital with that worldview makes a ton of sense. Now, it just so happens we now know with the benefit of hindsight, that worldview is not the worldview we live in today, that there are parallels with sports, but they're not strict, that the markets function more like entertainment markets. You don't think there's one sitcom that's just the best. And then if you have an ultimate sitcom, no other sitcoms can exist at the same time, right? So like we've accepted that there's going to be more fragmentation and things that maybe make that strategy look wrong. But I would argue it was a great strat. Like it shows real conviction and decision and all the things that you usually want big company CEOs to do and they don't do well being done, so I'm defending this about a decision that, candidly really damaged a game that I care personally about, but I see the business logic behind it. We now know probably it wasn't the right business logic.
But do we know that? Like, I don't think there's any evidence that if they had kept a Heroes of the Storm esports team, it would be doing well at all.
Good point.
Like, why would it be doing any better than Overwatch or Call of Duty?
Well, no, but maybe
doing worse. We know that,
right?
Well, I mean, that's not a hard.
We don't know, but we don't know.
We probably do.
No, you're right. Right. We don't know. But to Paul's point, with the decision, if your decision is $0, or any number above 0, right? Any, like, probably in the world I just described to you, the answer was scale back the program gradually, significantly reduce the budgets, have a presence that's big enough to keep the community galvanized and let it grow itself, but don't just rip the rug out. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's an easier argument to win because I don't have to argue that they should have been pumping 150 million into it year to year. I just have to argue that the right answer was don't turn it to 0.
Well, if your argument is, would it be better off than if they did nothing? Sure, but that's not how any company like allocates resources. It's like, hey, we could spend $10 million and we'll make $5. You're like, well, that's not a great return on investment. Like, they're obviously allocating. They're looking at it versus other things they can invest in. What they did, I think a year and a half or 2 years ago, they reallocated a lot of resources internally to their biggest franchises. So they really allocated to Call of Duty, Diablo 4. So things that have come to fruition, right? Warzone.
I'm the biggest fan of shrink to grow. Yeah. I think businesses do not shrink to grow enough. It's hard to do because you actually shrink, but then you grow a lot more and you make up for it, but it's scary. However, I will say that in this particular instance too, I think you can make a compelling argument that shrinking to grow or really any slate of esports properties wasn't right. And it was the damage it did to the credibility and commitment in the scene, right? Like, I think I would argue, and this is a bold argument, but I'd say I think Overwatch would be performing better if something like Heroes had been more quietly downshifted, because it would have been harder to have doubts about Activision Blizzard's commitment to an entertainment-based sports property. Right. Like, I think one of the reasons why Riot has done so well with Valorant, despite, I think, maybe not the best launch of all time, right, is because nobody questions Riot's commitment to make Valorant work. So even if some numbers aren't quite, even if Valorant launches and it doesn't delete CSGO instantly, which I think were many people's expectations for this, right? Like, even if that's the case, people think huge company, tons of resources. This is something safe. I can commit to it. I can stay with it. And I think as soon as you ruin that narrative, which Here's the Storm, maybe it's a small ruining of the narrative, but it's one, as soon as the wrinkle is there that, they do back away from things, and they back away quickly and without warning, which is what happened with Heroes, it's damaging to all the other strategic tentpoles you want to make that hinge on a belief of sustained investment. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, your point is fair, but I don't, once they got all those billionaires to invest, $40 million, I don't know if that was like, I don't think Overwatch isn't popular because people think the league's going to disappear. I think it's going to disappear because nobody watches it. But anyway.
I just want to wrap up on this point. Hindsight on like strategy and investments are always 20/20, right? Like, it's easy to go back and say this was a mistake. My simple view is again, having the hindsight of seeing what didn't work is, I think maybe Activision Blizzard would have been better served having esports initiatives for all of their properties, but far more like the Riot model, where it's more grassroots driven, more organically driven. We don't need billionaires coming in. We don't need to charge millions of dollars right? Put the bar low to start, see what works, figure it out, and then back sort of which one, the one or two that are winners. And maybe Heroes would have been one of those, probably not. But I think, I think their esports business in its entirety and the people who have invested in it would be in a better place today. Let's move on. Let's talk about something totally stupid. I like doing these every so often. Actually, we kind of do one a week, I feel like. It's would you buy one of these? And CES is in full swing right now, for those of you who don't know. It's all virtual, of course. So we're seeing sort of all the gaming companies announcing their latest and greatest. And this one caught my eye from Razer. It's Razer's concept gaming chair, because we all love gaming chairs. And they call it Project Brooklyn. I'm actually not sure why, but it wraps the player in a huge 60-inch flexible OLED screen that retracts if you can see here in the back, into the back of the chair. So I guess it takes less space or something like that. There's like a little video here, so you can see how this chair actually works. But the screen comes out from the back.
Wow. How much does this cost?
And wraps around you. I don't think they announced any pricing. It's still a concept.
Wow. It's gonna be hard to say if I can buy it. I don't have Paul Dawalibi money, man.
I am gonna get one of these, put it in the office if it ever does come out. But I'm curious what you guys think. Would you buy one? Is this an interesting, because esports hardware like this, I think, is interesting, right? Because there's an entire market for this. In some ways, it's bigger than the games themselves. Is this interesting? Do you like this direction? William, you're muted, my friend. Always once.
Oh, yeah, always once. To me, this just proves nobody really knows what to do with gaming chairs. Because isn't this announcing a screen? Like, isn't the cool piece of this a screen that you can like unfurl and refurl? Like, isn't that the major innovation here?
True,
like,
but a chair is so much more sellable. Like,
but like the fact that you attach the screen to the chair, like I can think of tons of great uses for this that are better than the chair. Like, for example, I would like to travel with a big screen so that I could like maybe play with it on an airplane. Like, that would be sweet. Can I take it off? Sorry, I mean, I can't. My attitude is super cool screen. I maybe it is a screen that they're selling too, but also it seems pretty high concept. I don't think this is something that's coming to market anytime soon.
I would bet good money this is like 2022 retail launch. Like, I don't think this is that far out, just to be clear. And I'm guessing because I've seen things similar to this, obviously not with the cool retractable screen and all that. But these chairs that integrate, all the screens, and the chair has sort of full motion and a little bit. And you're talking like $3,000 to $4,000. So my guess is this is in the 5 range, maybe 5 to 10 range, depending on how fancy that OLED is. Victoria says, does the screen come out manually or no? Actually, Victoria, I don't know. The way they put it in the video.
That would be such a letdown if you have to like unfurl it.
You look like you're taking an arrow out of your quiver, William.
It's like putting the top on an old convertible. You got to get out of the car and put this thing. I'm guessing it's automatic.
It has to come out automatically, otherwise.
Yeah, otherwise it's garbage. No one wants it. Martin says, yeah, but the screen is the cool part. And Victoria says, one of those umbrella hats, but a screen. It's true. That actually would be an even better version than the chair, right? If I could put something around my head and it has a screen sort of attached, and I just walk around with this screen.
That's VR. No. You just described VR.
That's true.
Yeah. Good job, Paul. Good job.
It's Razer. It's not me. All right. Lindsay, you're muted now.
That's true. Is the solution just an Oculus?
It's Google Glass.
It's true, but really cool Google Glass. Pull my back with the reach around.
I would love a reality television to be fully immersed.
I want to do one last story here, guys. What do you want to talk about? We can talk. I'll give you guys the choice. We can talk about Facebook sharing some market report. I don't think it's that interesting. Playtika, which is a mobile gaming company, eyeing a $10 billion valuation. We can talk about Super League raising $8 million. We can talk about Ven and Blast joining forces. Chris says, thought for sure you were going to bring up Razer's Rgb Mask. I could bring it up. I did have it. Here you go. This is for William, because everything RGB is cool.
Wait, is this what I think it is? Is it a mask that glows?
It's RGB.
Oh, that's awesome. So like the mask, so like if I'm gaming, I will glow different colors.
I don't know where they get to the RGB.
Yeah, they really are underselling the RGB stuff.
What is RGB?
Red, green, blue.
There you go. There's the.
Okay. Oh, well, that.
Gaming thing?
They should have led with that. I'll buy that if it has colors on it. If it chroma syncs.
Yeah. Please talk about that.
Let's do the $10 billion one, Paul. I think if we have to.
Martin says,
you want to talk about Super League? I enjoyed it. We can talk about Playtika and Super League.
All right, no, leave out Playtika. Do Super League. That
okay.
Yeah, let's do Super League.
Playtika is more of a real company though.
We'll do Ven and Blast.
Super League earlier.
No, do Super League, and I don't even want to talk about it. I just want Jeff's take on Super League.
Oh, I don't want to give my take on Super League.
Okay, so it's just me and
I mean, I wanted to hear Paul give his take.
Paul
on
and I
Super League.
talked about this
I have to-
earlier. So if neither one of you
How about this? How about this? Each do one thing on a story. Paul does Super League because we all want Paul to talk about Super League. I
always got to be the bad guy.
Yeah, I do
you have a
Playtica.
reputation, Paul. You're the bad guy.
Yeah.
You know how it is.
And-
We are in the end. We have to keep relations up.
Yeah.
Not me.
Like
No,
Okay,
I legitimately want Paul's comments. So let's do that. Let's do.
All right,
let's
just
do-
on Ven. I want to talk about Ven.
Okay, you do Ven. Yeah, and Jeff and I are quiet. No, I do Playtica.
Okay, let's talk about Super League. Super League announced $8 million sale of common stock. Okay. Again, for those of you who don't know, when you're a public company, technically you can issue shares anytime you want. If there's a buyer for them, you can raise dollars, right? This is why you go public. It's usually for the easy access to capital, right? In August, Super League did a fundraiser. They raised money. Basically, what they're doing every quarter is raising money to cover their losses. What's interesting here is they raised this time. They're trading at about $3.16. They raised these 3 million shares at a price of $2.60 per share. So to get people to put money into the business, the investors were sort of given, again, a deal, right? They get to pay less than the going rate of those shares. What's two interesting things. One, it's a little bit of a bump in terms of the stock price, like what the investors paid, the 260 from the last round that they did. I think that's interesting. I think it's mostly interesting because all of the increase in Super League stock price, in my mind, if you go and you look at their press releases and you track them against what their stock price is doing, what I found was, hang on, I'm gonna show you guys. This to me was interesting. What I found was there was, in particular, one announcement that they made on December 18th, and if you saw like December 19th, their stock price took a big jump. But fundamentally, the announcement that they made was sort of like nothing. Here was the article. This is the press release they put out. For Super League, the holidays are the most engaging time of year! Exclamation point. This is the headline of the press release of a public company worth tens of millions of dollars. Look, people ask me all the time. I will gladly tell you where I think people should invest their money in esports. And there's about 1 million ways you can be massively successful and make money in the space right now. Super League is not one of them. Like what these press releases and these constant financings and like all of this sort of attempt to sell some vaporware pretty much shows me is they don't really have a strategy. Like I fundamentally feel like Super League doesn't really know what they want to be or what they want to do. I think that's my biggest indictment of the business. Like I sort of don't care about press releases and stock prices and everything like that. At its core, like on the fundamentals, I always encourage people to invest in companies where the strategy is really clear, where you know where the company's going, the CEO has a super clear direction, and they're executing on it. Super League, I just don't know what they want to do. When you have press releases like this that tell me nothing about fundamentally what their business is about, that really worries me. I worry for the investors who are in this. I have a funny feeling right now it's a case of people are worried it may go to zero, and so they have to chase their bad money with good money right now to keep this thing afloat. So I don't know what's going to happen to Super League, but I'm definitely, this is one of the few, really honestly few companies in the entire space I'm quite bearish on. So
it's true. It's impressive that they're able to continue to raise this money. I mean, it's probably a testament to Anne. I mean, who's, you get in front of her and you talk to her, and she talks a very good game. I think, Paul, I share some of your concerns. I think they have an audience. They haven't been able to monetize it. It'll be interesting to see, next quarter whether they continue to ramp up the monetization. Because they mentioned some of the stats there. They've got 130,000 daily players. Like that's not nothing. Getting 130,000 people to do anything is somewhat impressive. So we'll see. And I'm trying to be a little bit positive. We'll see if they actually can monetize it, because the problem in the past has been they haven't. So we'll see if they can. But I don't want to, I just want to take a step back. Raising $8 million is impressive. I mean, that is not a small feat to be able to do, even as a public company with access to capital. It's still not that easy to put that together. So, good for them. And, hopefully those investors don't get too burned. But, I think it's not a small feat to do that.
Here's the litmus test, Jeff, for me, which is, can you describe in 2 sentences what Super League Gaming does?
No.
I can't either. And I would challenge anyone. I don't think anyone can. That's a problem. When you're any company, private, public, doesn't matter. If you can't do that, it's a big problem. I'm with you on the $8 million is impressive. I think where I don't know, and I haven't dug enough here really, is how much of that is coming from existing shareholders, right? Because I would guess a lot of it is, again, who are really worried about where maybe the business is going and are figuring, well, look, I'm already in for 10 million. Like, what's another 4 or what's another 2 or what's another, right? It's that kind of thinking, I think, that may be, may be the reason for why they continue to raise dollars in spite of the lack of strategy or focus.
Could be. I feel like you see that kind of thinking or that kind of investor, action in public or private companies more than public companies, but maybe these guys are so small that they kind of are, their investors are thinking about it like a VC or, like a small PE kind of fund. But yeah.
Okay, guys. Now I get to do. I appreciate this dialogue, but when we agreed to do this one take, one story, I didn't think it was going to be,
Are you going to talk about Super League or not?
No, I'm going to do Playtica because I can give you the Playtica take in 30 seconds, and I think it's a good one. You ready for
clear,
this?
we have to do the Venn one too. And hang on, I just want to read this comment. Nick says, been listening to the podcast on Spotify for the last couple months and finally was able to catch the live stream. Nick, welcome. It's so glad to have you, actually. And thank you for listening to the podcast.
Okay.
William, go ahead.
Lindsay's going to do this. I'm just going to do my hot take on this. Okay, so Playtica, $10 billion, right? $10 billion.
Yes.
Bethesda, $7.5 billion. That's what Microsoft paid to buy Bethesda, right?
Yep.
Bethesda, Elder Scrolls, right? Fallout, right? Playtica, June's Journey, a hidden object game full of romance and mystery, and Pearl's Peril, a hidden object game full of romance and mystery. The thing I'm going to make here is I think probably that $10 billion is fair, given the number of users and the number of dollars spent by those users flowing through those titles. The lesson here, and I consistently take this away every time, is I underrate mobile. Just because it doesn't feel big and premium and it's not the thing that I'm into as the hardcore gamer. Like, I see stories like this. I do that quick comparison. And I'm telling you right now, like, the thing I'm vowing to do in 2021 is not underrate mobile. It is, as much as it's been fun to be a gaming elitist and, basically like, oh, PC is the best, right? Like, or, oh, console's the best. I only play the AAA, the best games, right? The reality is, like, mobile matters so much. And one of my New Year's resolutions is to focus more on the mobile market.
I love it, William. I just want to give our listeners a bit of just background for those who haven't heard of the company. It was originally owned by Caesars Interactive. A Chinese private equity firm bought it for $4.4 billion. Okay, in 2016. Today they have what's the number here, like 35 million daily active users, and basically they're planning to go public at a valuation of 10 billion is the way it's being priced right now, and they're looking to raise as much as $1.6 billion in the US IPO. It'll be interesting to see if they see a 75% bump day one again. So we could end up with a $20 billion company here, not a $10 billion company. But fundamentally, this is a business that has 35 million monthly active users and is going to trade on the NASDAQ. So, 2016 they were bought for 4.4 billion. 10 billion doesn't seem out of line, right?
Power of mobile.
I mean, they have, I think, nine of their games are in the top 100, which is the most of any company, including, Zynga, Activision, Aristocrat, even Tencent doesn't have as many, in the US, at least in the iOS store. So yeah, I mean, William, I'm glad that I sort of, when you started your rant, I was ready to be like I was getting angry, like, oh my God, he's like talking shit. But I'm glad your point is so valid. Like, we underrate, mobile so much.
It's the illusion. It's the illusion of you generally tend to associate the premium side of the market as the best and biggest piece of the market, because that's how premium is marketed. But the reality is, like I said, I don't think this is unfairly priced. I think this is what it's worth, and all of the IP you stack up on the Bethesda side still falls short of this company. And I would argue, even knowing more about it from what you're saying, they're arguably underpriced from what you're sharing. That's a pretty impressive.
The only thing that I would say, if you're looking for like a bear case on Playtika, so they're very levered to social casino, which, as social casino is basically online gambling, but, not for real money. So it's like poker, slots, where you play basically, for fake money. As the US starts rolling out iGaming, which is a trend that's starting to happen. I think it's in 3 states now, but there's a lot of legislative momentum. You could see a lot of cannibalization from some of their games, like poker and slots, because when you can play for real money, why would you essentially bet money that you can't win back? So I think you could see some cannibalization from some of their online casino games. But other than that, I mean, it's a great investment. And those social casino games typically trade at lower multiples. So it'll be interesting to see whether they get like a side play multiple, which is usually like 10 times EBITDA, or something more like Zynga, which is trading in like the high teens. They have tried to diversify outside of social casino with some of their recent acquisitions. So it's going to be another interesting one to follow in the public markets. Not really esports, but it's a gaming name that's hot.
The lesson seems to be, if you want to invest in esports, if you have big dollars mostly, start being friends with all the bankers underwriting the IPOs. Make friends with all the bankers. Make sure you can get allocation. Lindsay, over to you. Ben and Blast. Do you want me to put the article up, or?
Yes.
Okay. So you want me to intro it?
Yes.
So Ben and Blast here. This is an article from sportsvideo.org. They're joining forces. Basically, the idea here, according to the press release, is to fuel esports expansion. Fundamentally, Venn historically has been all about producing like gaming lifestyle content. Blast produces more tournament, kind of like traditional esports, watching people play. And so they're partnering up basically to offer these kinds of esports events through Venn's network. That's the partnership being proposed here.
I was fully ready to hate this.
Okay.
I was very prepared to hate this. And then I thought about the couple esports tournaments that I've been to and how I didn't feel like the commentators or the kind of behind the scenes stuff, like the halftime shows or the stuff that's on the Jumbotron at a sports game, is like not the best. So I could see this working, maybe.
Okay.
I don't have a ton of faith. I did just check Venn's YouTube channels, and they are officially in the thousands of views rather than in the tens or hundreds.
Golf clap for Venn.
Some of them were even in the hundreds of thousands of views. So they're getting somewhere, I suppose.
Big things happening at the...
Right. Am I impressed by the amount of money they've spent to get there? Not at all. Am I worried that they're going to spend way too much money to do whatever they plan on currently doing? Absolutely. But this could maybe possibly work, and it is an area that's kind of underserved at the moment. So I'll be curious to see what happens. I am not as upset as I thought I would be.
I love where you're going with that, right? Which is like, and I think everyone knows I'm massively bullish on content, right? Gaming content in general, in many niches, again, is just even still today massively underserved. Okay. And where I love where you're going with this is it's like, if you could take the esports we watch today, right, and level it up with more entertainment, more personality, right, all the things we talk about, that feels like a win, right? I think the problem here is Ven
This is
has sort of
Ven's
proven
entertainment and personality. Yeah.
that they're out of touch with the gaming market. It's mostly cringe. It's like it's not exactly what the esports community needs. But I
the
see your
part that
point.
works
Right?
so- Yeah, I'm not sold on this. I'm just this strategically makes sense on paper. It's when you start looking at the product that it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. So we'll see. But at least it kind of makes sense. So maybe
Agreed,
more.
100%. On paper, it makes sense.
Mhm.
It's the execution based on Ven's track record.
We'll
The
see
jury's
what
out. Let's
happens.
put it. I think that's being nice, right?
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
Guys, that wraps up this week's podcast. Do we want to do what are we playing? Has anyone been playing any games in the new year, or are we all just too busy?
It's
I'm
time for my
playing.
tragic story.
Okay, can we? You want to tell the tragic story?
Yes.
Don't do what we're playing. I haven't been playing anything. Do Lindsay's tragic story.
Okay, this
Well,
ties into what we're playing though. So I'm sorry. Thank you. I truly hope I have
Two
more
new
information
segments
to
this
share
week.
with everyone. Yeah, I want everyone to know more about my life anyway. This is perfect. So my tragic story. I was cutting slips of paper today, for reasons I won't explain. I don't know. And I was holding the paper at a weird angle, and I snipped my finger instead of. Well, I snipped mostly the paper, but then I also got my finger at the tail end. And so I had a nice little gash going on, which isn't as deep as you would think, but my entire finger has now been sore. And I just bought Untitled Goose Game to play, and I don't think I can physically hold the controller because my finger hurts so badly.
Your mobile and console gaming career is over now.
I know, it's all
over.
because of the scissors. Oh.
But
I
yeah,
was
you still
just
did
about
the
to say
live
that.
stream. I mean, that's dedication.
That's dedication.
Round of applause.
And Martin's been playing Hades, which many people felt was the game of the year last year. I still have not played it, but many felt like that was probably the best game.
Probably my game. Probably my game by hours played last year. Yeah.
All right. That's interesting. Anyways, that wraps up this week's live stream, guys. Make sure stay tuned tomorrow for the podcast. It's a great episode. Again, we had a great guest. Every week we do those minutes. If you like that, would love for you to share it with people. We have a lot of new stuff coming out. I'll also remind people we have a revamped Instagram account, so make sure to follow us at Biz Esports. We also have a TikTok account. It's just William dancing. It's so good at Biz Esports. So go follow it if you want to see William dancing every day. I'm just kidding. It's not William dancing. I wish it was, but it's not. Thank you for coming to the live stream. We do this every Wednesday evening, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. If it's your first time, thank you for coming. If you're a regular here, tell your friends, bring people. This is how we grow it. And we really appreciate you guys interacting, asking questions, giving us your comments, challenging us. This is what makes this great. Thank you as always, William, Lindsay, Jeff. You guys are awesome. And as always, we will see you guys next week.